watch new Survivor. We're stuck in a bad dream, so we're watching an old season with a silly pirate theme. Of course there's a new theme song, but it's as half-assed as our plans. And then something, mumbo something, a word that rhymes with plans. John will make some dumb jokes. Andy likes to yell and curse. Something about some backup host. How could hell be any worse? We'll spend the whole time wishing that our lives were back on track. But until then, it's Pirate Survivor. We can all be glad for that. It's the Purple Rock Whatever Podcast, our mateys.
Hello. And welcome to the Purple Rock Survivor podcast. I am your host, Andy. With me this week is Matt and I believe Rocky, right? That's the name? Onion, right. Oh, sorry. Rocky was a different mascot. Survivor Pearl Islands has a mascot. Survivor Pearl Islands coverage provided by the Purple Rock podcast also has a mascot. And his name is Christopher. No, his name is Onion. How's it going, Matt?
It's going well. How are you doing over there, Andy, Onion, Christopher?
Support the bottom. We're doing well. We just finished watching this episode about, half an hour ago or so, Christopher? Yeah, did you have a good time watching it? Yeah. Don't be afraid to give your answers out loud. Did you have a good time watching it, Christopher?
Yes.
Who's your favorite character this season?
Rupert.
Can you name any other player besides Rupert?
No,
not at all. Yeah. Thank you for that input. Actually, that is going to lead to a discussion topic. I bet if I gave you some names, could you tell me if they are characters on the show or not?
No.
John. Is there a John?
No.
Is there a Johnny Fairplay?
No.
Is there a Billy?
No.
Is there a Christopher?
No.
Sandra?
No.
Austin?
No.
There you have it. I feel like you knew a couple of those.
No, I think you nailed them.
All right. Is that all for this week, buddy?
No.
Well, don't just leave him there. He could walk off the edge. And, no spoilers, but we don't like it when things happen to small animals. All right. How would you say anything last thing to Matt or the viewers? Well, thank you for coming on my audio show. Oh, I think he's a little nervous right now. So how about you go take him to bed, okay?
Goodbye.
Bye. Next time, don't be afraid to speak.
I was speaking.
Speaking more now that he's out of the room.
I was going to say, yeah, now that he's not camera shy, it's, quite loud and clear.
Yeah, I should probably just lock it every once in a while. But we're here to talk Survivor. This is what you get from our sort of off-season coverage. Just, kids interrupting and also just lazy audio quality. You guys, I'm sure people have noticed we have not put effort into that end this season, and apologies for that. But this is some kind of content discussing action-packed episodes of decades-old Survivor, and what an action-packed episode, huh, Matt?
Oh my God, so much happened.
They fished
well,
a bit.
I'm sure there was something.
Fishing.
Yeah, there was another fishing montage. Some
drinking.
Yep. There was some shelter moving.
This is bang up stuff. This is why this podcast exists.
That's right.
We are just really good at talking these things through.
Yeah.
And the thing of it is, we still love this season, or at least we have ranked it highly. I loved this when I first watched it, but I am finding the week-to-week coverage of it not easy to do, which is probably why I'm the only one who's always showing up for it, and everybody else is fighting for not it. A little behind the curtain there.
We're not fighting. It just, our schedules are so busy in these pandemic times that are limiting us from appearing.
Well, let's start at the beginning of the episode, because last week Emma and I were talking about how the episode left out some key parts of the data of strategy in order to blindside the viewers, which is exactly how a modern comment board would have described last week's episode. But as it turns out, and it's interesting that I completely forgot this, after 17 years, they didn't really leave us out much of Sean's way of thinking. He wasn't in on the plan until the very last second.
Right. And so, if you were wondering why didn't they show us, it's because John literally told him as they were about to walk into tribal council, the vote's on Burton.
Yeah, and they generally are not going to show you that because that's the same thing as showing us John going to the camera and saying, I'm voting for Burton. They typically don't do that unless, there's like a lot of machinations and stuff that, like they show it, in Palau years later because it's very key to the narrative of that episode. But, when seeing that Sean was like a latecomer to this plan, it really does kind of, reinforce that it was John's decision. And thus, I suppose they gave us what we needed.
I mean, also, when people sometimes complain about the show blindsiding us, a frequent hedge is that, well, if they explain it next week, that's okay, which is what they did here. They explained everything that went into that decision and why Sean voted for Burton. Now, did you buy any of what Sean was selling there about how, well, he and Burton weren't that close. He was looking to get rid of him at any moment.
Yeah, not so much. I mean, you seemed pretty close. You seemed close enough to him to be willing to also ostracize other members of your tribe. Like if you were really like, I'm not comfortable with the way that Burton's doing these things, I feel like other people should know that about you. They should, I feel like, you two aren't part and parcel because it just as easily could have been him last week.
It was funny when he was spinning that. I kind of thought to myself, no one's buying this, right? And then Trish was like, he didn't actually expect us to buy that, right? So I was like, thank you, Trish.
And yeah, he's very smooth and not only saying, we're with you. By point of comparison, many years later, Wu actually does a much better job when he's like, it's us, all of us, when he was like blindsided by a vote, it was very much like, hey, there he is, fellas, get him. But also like trying to bury Michelle, and it's just like, that's not why they're going to keep you if they do.
Yeah, which, to jump forward just for a second, I mean, he buried Michelle, but as you said, that's not why they kept him over her. So.
No, it's not because it's like, oh, well, we can trust Sean. It's either because John feels like he can trust Sean, or that Sean has utility that they did not view in Michelle. Well, let's get that to that right now because
okay, sure.
It's a common thing we do on the show. It's an easy line in the breakdown of was the vote out a good decision? And I got to find most of this season, and a lot of it probably because of retrospect, which we try to avoid in discussing in this section, but more that's like, well, it was fine. It didn't. We know that this vote isn't going to matter. That's just a very soft spoiler. But was Michelle the right person to vote out? Should it have been Sean? Should it have been her?
She's probably the right person to vote out. Like it's she was obviously aligned with Burton before this. You had probably just as much trust issues, and as you said, Sean had at least proven in challenges to have a bit more utility.
Yeah,
so.
He was out there working the rudder in a reward challenge.
Yeah.
It's funny because now watching this, my wife was watching the rowing very intently because this summer we went out and rented a canoe for like an hour, and we did not go very far. And I mean they advised us not to go very far in the lake. No problem, because we would get a little bit and then turn.
Yeah.
And the issue was that Christopher wanted to sit in the back. And that's not
where the steering is.
And then I was in the front, so yeah, I'm just dragging us in a circle, even when I'm trying not to, because I'm so much stronger than everybody in the boat, but especially the person pulling up the rear. Yeah. And just saying that is like having Johnny Fairplay at the rudder is like having Christopher at the rudder.
Yeah, you think they might not have made that choice if Rupert was there, but perhaps.
So yeah, but they moved him, and I think just that utility. They know that when they were winning before, it's because they had a strength advantage. Yeah, and frankly, like even if it's even, because like Michelle has possibly performed well in challenges. Who's to say what? She certainly destroyed it in one challenge tonight. But we should actually talk about that.
Yeah, we should actually.
I guess we have to talk about it here because we've gone out of order. If for no other reason, you vote her out because she screwed up the plan. And it's like, it doesn't really matter if it's her or Sean, and we're pissed at you now. So sure, you. What the hell? That's gotta be the worst attempted non-throw or subterfuge ever.
And it's funny because they came in there, they had a strategy. They obviously had watched the show enough to know, okay, it's just going to be choking it down for most of it, and then there's going to be a tiebreaker, and the other side will be able to pick who goes to the tiebreaker. So we need someone good to appear to be bad at this. They had the strategy down. It was perfect. And Michelle's like, oh yeah, no, I'm really good at this. Everyone's like, okay, yeah, you seem obviously really good at this for some reason. And she's like, I'll tank. And then she gets up there and she just chugs it right down.
She may have done it better than anyone else, like better than Andrew Savage. Like she just destroyed it. And fair play didn't really help when he was doing the super obvious, oh, Michelle's more afraid than everybody. You're so subtle. Yeah. Everything fair play does, there's no real believability to it.
No.
Although I suppose, anyway. But yeah, what the hell? What the hell? Not even like a bad job at faking.
It's just that she completely forgot the plan. Completely forgot the plan. And did you see the camera went to Sandra as she was doing that, and Sandra just shot her a look like, "What the hell are you doing?"
Yeah, Trish, I think was it was so bad. Frankly, it's did she do some drinking before this challenge? Because I don't know how and we didn't get the scene, and the season likes to show us that scene, but it's how do you screw up the plan that bad? Frankly, just say you're not part of the plan. But she told us she was part of the plan. It wasn't just agreeing, as part of the group. She gave a confessional as though she was, excited about it.
No, I mean, she was all on board. She was like, this is what I got to do. And then just didn't.
Yeah, and it blows my mind. I can't fathom why you would do that. Again, I can understand not doing it well. I can understand, starting to, but getting annoyed by how long the other person was taking and then going. But it's even what she wants to show off. Well, you do that at the end. That was your hero moment.
Exactly. You get picked at the end, and then you chug there, and then everyone's like, "Oh my God, we chose wrong." Yeah.
Yeah, you can get the Kimmy moment. She won it at the end after the tribe picked her, which almost certainly is probably why they sniffed this out, because Australia is a very iconic season, and that's an iconic moment. But no, it's just baffling. So for that alone, not just annoyance that she screwed up the plan, which itself is a good enough reason.
Yep.
But it kind of shows that she can't be trusted to execute on a plan. What kind of ally is she? It's you had one job.
Yep. No, and I mean, and that's entirely true, because going forward, if you're deciding between her and Sean, the reason you would pick her over Sean is because you think you can trust her to work with your alliance better than Sean could, and this just showed that you have no reason to think that. There is absolutely no reason to think that.
Yeah,
so she gave a good sales pitch to. She gave a good sales pitch to Rupert afterwards, as she was literally throwing up in the bushes, which I was like, wow, they're showing that. That's interesting.
I think it's another example of how they maybe just played it safer back then than they do now. Because just with the treasure chest, we were wouldn't they just reshoot that now? Now I'd be what? Can you guys have this conversation when you're not ranching? Although maybe they like that, right?
Yeah, maybe they liked it. Maybe they thought that was good. I mean, maybe they did film it again, and they just decided to keep that, that take in, because they're like, no, this is real. This is authentic. People got to know that they're suffering out there.
Another thing, back then they were shooting on film, so maybe they didn't want to reshoot things too much.
That actually might be true too. But no, I mean, she gave the pitch to Rupert, and Rupert was the one to give the pitch to, because Rupert doesn't like Sean. He's the one person, more so than anyone else on that tribe, I think, that has a real axe to grind on Sean. But everyone else was like, nah, it's Michelle. And he had no chance of winning them over if he even tried, which I'm not sure he did.
Yeah, and like again, to get back to her like insane decision making, it's like she knows she's on the outs. She knows she was the only person who didn't vote last time. You'd think you'd be doing whatever you could to A, stay in the good graces or get into the good graces of the rest of the tribe, but B, to not go to tribal council. And all I can think of is maybe once she started doing it, it was just so gross that she's just like, I just got to power through this or I'll never do it.
Yeah, maybe going slow is actually harder than going fast. Like, so maybe when she was, maybe she started to try to go slow and was just like, nope, gotta just choke this one down as quick as possible.
Well, yeah, it's like she did it like she beat her opponent, like she was that good. One thing about that challenge, like I thought, like the roll, like the roulette wheel portion is like a fun little twist, but
yeah, I like that too.
Drinking it is stupid.
Yes, drinking it it seems much easier than eating it, except with the salt water added, because that just is gross and that makes it that's tougher to keep down.
Your body rejects salt water. That's
exactly
kind of how nature works.
But yeah, I agree. Like the roulette wheel was fun. The Jeff special was like a good twist on it because Jeff is like, I'm gonna try to punish you here, but drinking it is just. It's not as satisfying them drink like a disgusting smoothie versus them eat something like balut,
Well, it's always texture. That's the thing. Like, that's what the difficult thing.
Exactly.
Frankly, a lot of times it's the swallowing, like getting it down, like these dry bits sticking.
And that's what Sandra had trouble with.
Yeah, like, well, that's the only thing anyone had trouble with was the eating portion at the end, with Sandra, and then Darren did not, but Sandra did. Right. Everybody, like, nobody failed. There wasn't even like, I guess Sandra took a little longer to drink, but she still drank that thing easily. Yeah. And frankly, like even in Africa, when they were drinking like cow blood, I feel like everybody did it. It's just, then they went to the challenge, and Kelly Goldsmith didn't do it as fast as whoever did. Right. So yeah, I think just that, a little lesson there. Don't let them drink. They have to eat if you're going to do this at all. Or don't do it. Like I'm not.
I actually haven't seen one in recent seasons. When's the last time we saw a gross food challenge? I feel like it's been a while.
Yeah, nothing.
I feel like there was one in a somewhat recent season, and that was like the first time in a while. But
yeah. I can't think of one that leaves off the page. I know like Caramoan, like that was one of Cochrane's. Yeah, but that's a long time ago.
I feel like there was definitely one in Second Chances because I think Savage did it again. So,
yeah, and seasons, and that was big on recycling challenges that people have been in. So
that may have been a small spoiler I just gave. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Oh, yes, I suppose that he returns. As I said last week, returning no longer equals to sustained success. There was a time when returnees typically were people who had been on the previous season a long time. They've literally brought back the first boot of a season. So if we let loose that somebody has returned, I feel like we're at enough of a point of a season where it does not surprise you to learn that Savage or Rupert has come back for other seasons. Like they've done enough already for you to be like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. But it does not portend necessarily success. We're not spoiling that. Okay, so, and it's weird that we're talking this much about challenges, but that's all Survivor was, man. We're not done talking about challenges, are we? Drake won 2 of them.
I know. Good for them. No, I mean, one they win with Rupert with them. I'm not sure they would have won with that.
No, because Rupert would have been on the other team.
Right, and also Rupert did all the diving for them because they have no one else who can dive.
Yes.
So yeah, and then the gross food challenge is like, okay, fine, they won the gross food challenge. Who cares?
Yeah, Dara swallowed just a little bit. Sandra was getting it done. She's just a little slower, and her gag reflex engaged. Which credit to Dara, that didn't happen, but whatever. It's not like this big, massive team success is 1v1 matchup decided it all. That and Michelle's failure to do her job.
It's a shame John isn't on this podcast because I feel like John would have had a lot to say about Dara's gag reflex not engaging.
Not a shame that he isn't on the podcast at all. But yeah, it was all about Rupert, in that challenge. But even prior to that, this was the payoff to Rupert as a reward. as mentioned last week, the first time that happens in Survivor history, not the last.
Not the last.
And like, how about like Rupert's just, observations on Morgan?
They're great. Like, honestly, like the highlight of this episode is Rupert on Morgan, both for how much Morgan loves Rupert, but then Rupert's just like, these guys suck. Like, they're terrible. They all they do is complain and then don't get anything done. And now I understand why they keep losing. And it's like,
and
yup.
it's bang on, nailed it, Rupert.
Bang on.
I'll subscribe to your podcast because we've been saying the same thing. Yeah, he was there for one night and he figured it out. At first I was like, Rupert, why are you getting to move your shelter? You're not going to be here very long. But then the episode's like he's going to be there 3 days. It's like, oh yeah, you're going to drown in 3 days. Good call.
Oh yeah. And nope, not going to say that. Going to hold on.
No, we'll talk a little bit more about that in the spoiler section of the podcast after
Yep.
stuff. But yeah, just like him at camp was just for one, the observation was hilarious, but it also like, how do you not love Rupert? Especially, thinking about like at that time, if you're a viewer at that time, what the show was like, it just really leans in it. And, he does everything well for them. They don't know how to use the sling. I've never used a sling before, right? Like I've never seen one, but it's never seemed to be something that like people failed to pick up in Survivor. I didn't know they had one.
Nope, me neither. I mean, I guess if people had failed to pick it up in Survivor, then like we probably would never have seen it because it just would not have appeared on the show. But here they're like, I didn't know how to use it. It's like, that's how you use it? Oh my God. It's like Rupert knows everything. And Rupert's like, yeah, no, you don't want to do what you were saying. No, not at all. This is how you use it. And they're like, wow.
Yeah, and like I feel like there probably has been like every once in a while like somebody had to show, but like I don't feel like there's ever been a situation when an entire tribe, not single one person, be like, "This is elastic." Like guys, again, I didn't know, and then as soon as he showed it, like, oh yeah, that makes sense. You're pushing tension, and then you release tension. Yeah, that's how a slingshot works. That's how like a rubber band. How is this complicated? Well, how do you suck this much?
They're really bad.
Yeah, and like an observation I believe we had in week 2 is like, how are we not bringing up Morgan as a failure, like one of the worst tribes of all time? Because I mean, again, they did not win a challenge for 3 episodes.
Yep.
I think part of it is we've already seen now they're on a winning streak. They won, immunity last week, although
and one winning streak is enough to kind of like wash away the stench of worst ever.
Well, I think this is what it is. I think Rupert and his involvement with them in this episode bless them for us as an audience, right?
Yes.
Like, and again, in doing so, and we're watching now, it's by showing us and everybody how much they suck. But the difference is they are soaking it all in, right? They're like, yes, Rupert, whatever you say, Rupert, Rupert's the best. He's everyone's hero. You can do everything. And they like valued him. Yes. Whereas Drake did not. Obviously, like some did. I think Krista, Sandra seemed, on board with him. But we see Drake, making fun of him, taking him for granted. And then we see Morgan being like, Rupert's the best. And as the audience, we're like, yes, Rupert is the best. So I think that's probably where it turned around, because I remember rooting for Morgan, right? Yeah. And then what I've been watching the first one, it's like, why did I ever root for Morgan? Like, and
especially
again,
you only like front runners.
Yeah, and some of that is clearly like a change. I think back then I was far more prone to root for underdogs.
Okay.
And things changed. Frankly, I think it started the very next season where that change in me happened. And it's like, you know what? No, I like to root for people to do well. I'm gonna screw with this underdog narrative. And I think at this point in the season, so I was wondering, like, is it just that? Was it that I was feeling bad for Morgan? But I feel like, no, I think it's this episode. Once they get, the Rupert blessing, suddenly I was all like, yeah, Morgan gets it. They know that they know he's great. Drake doesn't even deserve him. And that's probably why, in retrospect, I didn't have the negative opinion that I should have always had on Morgan.
No, and I think you're right, because like I certainly didn't remember that they were this terrible for so long. And then, even now that they've won a few, that they're still terrible. Like, I mean, like they're just not a good tribe. And, really didn't remember just how bad they were. In retrospect, they really should be in the conversation for worst ever. Like, they probably don't quite deserve it, but
Yeah, like
no,
I
they're
mean, for
bad.
worst ever is a solved case, right? Like that.
Yes. Yes.
And we're we won't fully spoil it because I highly encourage people to like check out the seasons not long after this one, and it's like only 3 seasons. It's not far from this. But yeah, that one like it's one of those things where you have to be like, besides this person who
Right.
or this tribe, what's the worst? Because that one's like a solved one, but
Right.
this is right up there. This is
Yeah.
right up there with like Malcolm's terrible tribe in Philippines.
Right. Or the
That's
bad
thing,
tribe.
right? Like people use them and that's a term and all that.
Right.
Are they?
Nah, yeah, these guys are as bad as Matt Singh.
Yeah.
Matt Singh lost 4 before they were broken up. 4 immunities in a row before they were broken up. And that was in a 3-tribe season where you only had to beat one of the 2.
Yeah.
And they
I mean,
couldn't do that.
again, plenty bad, but I also suspect there probably wasn't as many reward challenges because typically in 3-tribe seasons, they don't do as many, like in the first couple of episodes, it's just too busy for that. But like that tribe had Denise and Malcolm, right? Like what does Morgan have? Obviously, this is where we talk about, Savage, and you've been an admirer, but man, I've been noticing that he kind of sucks, and not in the way that like people have told us that he sucks. Not in like like the super arrogant macho men type stuff. Sure, there's that, but honestly, I've always found that to be part of the fun of his character, and I still am a bit. It's more like he didn't know how to use a sling. He was letting Osten go out there in the swimming challenge while he was digging in the sand. Like, what are you doing? Savage.
Yeah, no, the thing about him is that like he's the leader of this tribe, and he's giving all the confessionals about how like they're not doing well enough, and like the tribe, and it's it's a shame that the tribe's losing and they're trying so hard. But like, dude, if you're the self-appointed leader, you got to do a better job leading, because one of the things that's really obvious about these people in challenges is they're just not listening to anyone, and they're not working together as a team. And so if you're going to be the person that's like in charge of the team, you got to actually be in charge of the damn team.
Yeah, it's almost like he wants to be like the coach that like empowers his players and like sits back and lets them. No, they need the micromanager. They need somebody to be like, you do this, you do that, remind them as the challenge goes. And frankly, I get the impression that they'd be happy with that.
100%.
I don't think there'd be like a lot of challenge. Like I feel like if Drake did that, there'd be like all these different agendas. And who are you to tell me what? Like Sandra, I don't think would go for that. But
yeah. And I think it's obvious because the thing about it is like, so take the, the debate to move the shelter. It's someone's like, you got to move the shelter because the tide's coming in. But then what happens with this tribe is they treat it as as like an open forum to discuss, which, that can work with some tribes, where like everyone gives their opinion, but then you actually have to reach a conclusion and do it, which this tribe doesn't want to do. Everyone wants to be there. Everyone wants to be right. They want to do their own thing. This tribe doesn't need the open forum. This tribe needs a dictator, and Savage is not. And Savage, despite what people want to think, is not a dictator. And that's actually his greatest fault in this tribe.
It was interesting. Well, actually, no. The rest of that would be a spoiler discussion. But yeah, it's just like they're all just crap. They were. Rupert was the best thing that ever happened to them, and I think why it speaks well of them is that they clearly knew it. They don't question that for a second. Now, Andrew does do the weak thing of like, well, yeah, we had like he's like, we finally won this challenge. Well, yeah, we had Rupert, but no. Well, yeah, you had Rupert, but you won because you had Rupert. It's like, well, we were all rowing that boat. Congratulations. Like, it's clear that Savage is like one of those like sports fans that just loves the cliche about like it's not the size of the dog and the fight, it's the fight and the dog. Man, no, screw that. Give me the big fucking dog, right? Yeah. The other one's like, oh, I'm really cheering for the scrappy team. Oh, I'm gonna pick the Miami Heat because they have the best 3 to 7th best players in the series. No. It really actually just matters who had the 2 best. And in this case, it mattered that who had Rupert. It was talent that won you that challenge, not team spirit. But God bless.
No, I completely agree.
And up the sucky people in that tribe. It's time for everybody's favorite weekly segment of our Pearl Islands coverage.
Oh yeah.
Did Osten suck this week?
Oh, you better believe he did.
I titled this that with the idea that maybe there'd be a week where we'd be like, no, but instead,
No, they were all
it's
Duffy.
about how did Austin suck this week? Because
Yeah. So this one goes back to the shelter for me, which I believe it would for you too, where Rupert's like, tide's coming in, you gotta move the shelter. And it's not that Austin says, I don't want to move the shelter, or I don't think we should move it to where you want to move it. It's that he says, the tide hasn't hit us yet, and I don't think we should move it until the tide hits us. Which basically means you want to be drowning in that damn shelter before you move it in the middle of the night or whenever. So
and I want to do it when I have one less workhorse here with me. Like,
Yep.
you have this. Somebody is
You
going
got
to do this
Rupert.
for you who should. Almost anybody else in the history of Survivor would be like, yeah, you guys should move your shelter. You know that? I'll be over here while you
Right.
do that, because I ain't living here for long. If I need to in the next 2 nights, I'll go sleep by myself over there.
Yep. Right. And I mean, now Austin's like, well, if we move it where Rupert is, we'll get bit up. It's like, better than being drowned. If you're wet, you're going to get bit up too. I mean, mosquitoes like water, man.
Yeah. Yeah. No, otherwise he wasn't much. He drank the smoothie like everybody else.
Right.
Yeah, he rode that boat. But just that. And then okay, well then let's just move it back a bit right here. For one, that's not enough. And for two, that's not saving you work. You got your fire pit here too.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's just clearly he just doesn't want to do it because building the shelter was so hard. It's like, it's a shitty shelter anyway. Frankly, this is your chance to build a better one again with the guy who's doing everything for you.
Yeah, it was kind of really funny to watch the shelter just disintegrate as they moved it. just showing how shitty it was. Just like, man, this tribe, this freaking tribe.
I mean, ultimately, I don't know if any bamboo shelters are really built to be portables. They're not mobile homes. But it's like, yeah, you're disassembling it. That's what you're doing.
Yeah.
Get going. Let it be a lesson to all future Survivor players. You should build on beaches. All right. Since we moved around, I'm not sure what's next.
I actually think we may have covered everything.
I think we've covered this episode. Jesus Christ.
It only took us 30 minutes or so. This is great, man. No. This is how it's supposed to be. When you get me on this podcast, things move. I don't waste your time here.
Actually, it wasn't on there, but just to put a wrap on this episode. How are you feeling about the season? And I just want to ask about it because again, we're just kind of this stark realization that we have some spoiler type content, so maybe we would have carried the conversation a little longer, but that there really isn't much to say. But is that affecting your enjoyment of the watching?
Actually, no. I'm still really enjoying the season to watch. I mean, now maybe it's because the people are really, I find them compelling. Even the sucky tribe of, Morgan. I like, it's like I find something compelling about them in their failure. Frankly, Osten is much more fun to watch. With the hindsight perspective of, wow, Osten really sucks. Which I the first time I watched, I had no idea. So I didn't know that was the story they were telling with him. Now that I know that's a story they're telling with him, yeah, I actually really enjoy watching him. He's by far the most interesting person on that tribe.
Yeah, I also am enjoying it. Just it doesn't fall into the wheelhouse of discussion. And some of that is also because a lot of what we usually do on a weekly show is future based, right?
Yes.
Will this thing that we're discussing matter? Well, we know what matters, and we're
Right.
trying to not really get into it at this point.
Right.
Yeah, again,
it's hard to discuss, the strategy and whether it was a success or not when you actually know whether it was a success or not. Also there's just a lot less strategy anyway. So
it really isn't, and it's just it's the big observation for me. And again, because I loved it this season, this was a season that and I also loved the season previous. So Survivor was on an upswing after a really down 5th season. But it also shows to me why I started to gravitate towards certain types. I feel like the show was ready and kind of needed to evolve the strategy a bit, kickstart some action. And it's fine for this season because they were fortunate enough to nail some, key casting choices, right?
Yeah.
And I know some people be like, well, no, that's editing's job. And, again, editing is doing an all right job, but
you can't
do it if
edit
it's not there.
Rupert out of nothing.
Yeah, and it's so like if it's not there, if you don't have some of these engaging characters, it's not going to be that anyway, right?
Right.
So I am enjoying it, and I'm looking forward to every week. If I had to do it over, I think I would have done this 2 episodes at a time. If we do this in the winter, it might.
Yeah, which we probably will, because Survivor won't be back in the spring anyway. So we'll probably have to have some sort of filler.
Unless we just give up on it, like some people on the site do. No, because we're busy and things happen.
Yeah.
Honestly, what am I covering? There's no way that person is going to be listening. So the other weekly segment that has nothing to do with Survivor, and frankly, it was a good idea that I came up with this gimmick sometimes, given the dearth of subject matter at times. It is our weekly updog, which makes no sense to you if you haven't been listening along or on our website, and that's cool. We love inside jokes. So this week's discussion standpoint, the idea I got this from is because you and I actually have another podcast where we discuss superhero movies when we deign to watch them. We have one hanging over our heads right now that we just not that one that's hanging over my head. It's like we should get to that, right? But and we haven't.
We really don't want to.
Yeah. But yeah, so don't worry, we're not going to get into movie superhero discussions. But if you're ever interested in that, Infinity Stone podcast, that's the other one. Actually, also a podcast that is just starving for new content that we never know when might show up again.
This is true. But the updog this week is, and you proposed this, is what is a useless superpower that you would want to have? Now this is something.
Clarify for people.
Yes.
This cannot be a really good superpower. This can't be something that would make you a superhero. You couldn't use this to fight crime or to be a supervillain, I suppose. It's not something that could make you richer or successful. Like certainly it could maybe aid you in the pursuit of some level of ability at your job. That's certainly possible, but nobody is going to make a comic book based on you. It's just hyper specific, otherwise useless superpower.
Right. So like the example that I gave when you proposed this was like the ability to make a perfect grilled cheese every time, which is very useless, but like, hey, if you love grilled cheese, that's like a great superpower, right?
That's right. And I also want to clarify, like, we're not talking about like a skill. You're not Daredevil or somebody like learning something, and some of these things could be things that other human beings have created as skills. I don't want them as a skill. I want it as my superpower. I want to just be able to do it and not acquire the ability.
Yeah.
So for me, I'll start, since it's kind of similar to your example. When you gave it, it's like, you better not take mine. And actually this came from, because my kid actually asked me this question. I would love the ability to know when something's done cooking, just intuitively. Like not testing it, not using a thermometer, not poking it and seeing if it bounces back.
Not cutting the meat open and seeing what it looks like inside.
Not like, even like I've cooked this dish so many times that I know the exact time. I mean, it's cooking and then just something in me is like, it's done.
It's done.
And that's it. Then that would be great.
Honestly, that's a good one. I would like some sort of like coffee superpower, by which I mean like the ability to not have to drink coffee to wake up, but just like if I am sleepy, I can just activate a superpower and I am wide awake, just like as if I just injected myself with caffeine. And like,
and you're not getting like super powered, like that movie where
Limitless?
takes a pill.
Limitless. Limitless. You're talking about limitless.
Like you're not getting to this isn't giving you upper level human ability.
No, this is basically just like, this is just like a jolt of adrenaline or caffeine. I'm no more like stronger or faster or anything. I'm just suddenly awake when I was sleepy before.
And this would help you with work. It would help you just getting your ass out of bed.
Getting out of bed, man. I suck at that, especially in quarantine. I am so bad at it.
Guilty. The kids, once the kids started going back to school, I at least like I have to get up and help them. But I'll be honest, sometimes I come back home and have a little nap. I'm like, really? It's like, if I was going into the office, I'm not doing anything but checking Twitter until 9 a.m. anyway. So
whereas like, my dog will wake me up, but then it'll be so early that I'll just be like, well, I can go back to bed before, because it's like 7:30. I can go back to bed, and yeah, then I'm back to bed. So that's yeah.
All right, so yeah, feel free to share what your hyper-specific, not incredibly useful superpower would be in comments, and you can do that on our website at purplerockpodcast.com.
Nice.
You could follow the show or respond to us on Twitter at Purple Rock Pod. I am at Purple Rock Andy.
I'm at Purple Rock Matt.
And that is all for the non-spoiler section of this discussion. So if you have not watched this entire season and don't know what's happening, but still are somehow following us, for one, drop us a line and let us know if this is a useful bit that we're doing, or are we just making things harder for ourselves for no reason. And spoilers now. Oh my God, Rupert, of all people in the history of this show, is the one to be like, man, these guys are stupid for building a beach, building a shelter on a beach. Don't they know about tides?
Oh my God. And the incredible thing is, so of course we're referring to Rupert in All Stars, where he built a shelter on the beach and then it got flooded like immediately, pretty quickly.
Oh, it was that night, and like they thought they were going to die. Like Jerry, yeah, I mean, she says it on camera, and it turns out it was worse because I think they got hit by like a monsoon or something. Like many, like I think Ethan's described it as one of the worst nights of his life, and that dude nearly died from cancer twice.
Yes. But here's the other thing about it. It was the same place. All Stars was in the same place. Which is the amazing part of it. I so wanted to say something about that during this, but we had to save it for the spoilers. But my God, he comes back to the same beaches, to the same damn beaches, and he's like, you know what? You know what I told those idiots not to do last season? I'm gonna do it this season, only worse.
Yeah, but get closer.
Closer.
Like, they were at least
underground. I'm gonna dig down.
I mean, so shout out to Sharkuli's commenter. He pointed this out like a couple weeks ago because I think there was like a subtle one, but this one is just the flashing lights. He himself is the person, as you say, in this very location who saw firsthand why you would never. And he decided, yup, that's the move, but more.
Gee, I mean, it's just, oh my God.
Look, I mean, if nothing is as symbolic as like the rapid change of like Rupert, from Pearl Islands versus the Rupert who read his press clippings, like this is, but it's just like I get from like how we got there as an ego standpoint. I get how he, was like maybe a bigger like self-aware character in All Stars, but it's like, how do you reverse what you knew? And frankly, like in this episode, maybe he doesn't know, like maybe it would have been a decision he would have made, and you get like, to feel like I'm the smart guy that knows you would never do that, because he's seeing like the water pushing up against their shelter at this point. Right. But a scant, what are we talking? Because he was only home for like,
I think they had like a month or two off before he went back out there.
Yeah, like it wasn't as quick as like a modern back-to-back.
No,
like,
but it was quick.
Had not aired. Like it had started to air, so people knew of him, and he knew that people loved him. But yeah, we're talking like a couple of months at max away from this exact moment, and he decides, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it more. Morgan had the right idea. They just didn't go far enough.
It's absurd. I mean, and it's like you said, like it's a great symbolizer of the difference between the Rupert and the Rupert that is to come. One thing that I think we've been talking about in these spoiler sections is just like, what is it different watching Rupert, knowing what he becomes on this show in future seasons? And I think the answer is no, weirdly enough.
Yeah.
I still really love Rupert this season.
Yeah, so what I've been noticing, and part of why I've been noticing is my wife has been saying it multiple times as we've been watching. It's just like, I'm just remembering why I loved Rupert,
Yes.
And it's like, for me, it's like what I'm remembering, like, again, because I loved Rupert, and it should be noted, like, this was the extreme majority position. I'm sure there were people who didn't. There always will be. But most people did. Yeah, I don't just mean like your casuals, although at that point wasn't everybody to a degree of casual.
Yeah.
He was widely and wildly beloved at this point. And what I'm noticing is I get why, like, I'm forgiving myself for feeling that way, but I can, like, there are little moments, and more of what it is like this episode, because this episode, he was great and everything, and he helped this other tribe. It was more that, like, you're starting to see how much the editors have their thumb on the scale when it comes to pushing Rupert. And like, we as a site, like, singled Rupert out as like in a significant moment in the development of Survivor, that like this is when they decided that they're really going to lean in to like a specific character in the hero edit. Right. And frankly, while I agree that Rupert himself is an incredibly influential part of Survivor, later we would do that series of articles too. I honestly question, because like it didn't really feel like a moment, but John insisted. And I will say the title of this fucking episode is Everyone's Hero. So like, in an episode that like basically all we had to talk about was how Rupert was everything, and everything that Rupert was not good. Again, I illustrated it with my son. My kids literally don't know who anybody but Rupert is. Like, again, I think it pressed, they like, as they were watching, like, I don't like that John. They were saying, I think they know who Osten is, but I'm guessing that's it. My son, my older son, at least started to like repeat Sandra's line from a couple of episodes ago, but
there you go.
He couldn't name her. It's all about Rupert. For them and for the audience for this season. And I will say, like, if you're not into that, like, just, this heavy focus on one person, then it's not going to work for you. Now, I will say, like, back then, I don't think people were as savvy about that. But if you're watching from the modern perspective now, and again, even not having seen Pro Islands, it's easy for me to understand how people like come away from this and be like, I don't understand what the big deal about Rupert was. And that's because they're from like a more modern perspective of like seeing the strings a bit more. And that's what happened with me. I'm seeing the strings.
Sure. And it's, but the thing is, like, one thing is that I didn't watch this season in real time. I actually came to this season after I got back into the show. And so I had seen Heroes versus Villains before this. So like, I kind of already knew what Rupert becomes. But when I watched the season for the first time, I loved Rupert. And now, as you said, you can see the strings a bit more. You can see the thumb on the scale, but I still mostly really like Rupert. There are moments where he comes off a tad grating. His arrogance is definitely more obvious now. He had the line, "Oh, they know a Drake is going to win this season," which true. He nailed that one, but like,
that's two now where you've called out the winner of the season in edits. That and Johnny Fairplay's comment.
Yep. But yeah, I mean, like, so while the arrogance is definitely on show, like, you can tell the editors have tamped that down and like tamped up the more lovable side of him. And like you said, like, I also think that he changed. Just, he got high on his own reputation.
We had this in the earlier part of the discussion and missed it, but I think it's better to discuss freely. Like, he had a couple of decisions to make this episode. And it's just like watching it then, or from that perspective, and frankly, watching people watch it for the first time as I was doing this, or in my wife's case, forgetting and remember seeing it almost the second time. I was like, she's gonna bug me for like bugging her. No, God bless. It is good that she has more important things taking up her brain than what happened on this TV show many years ago. Sadly, I do not. But like, for them, they're like, oh man, he's too, like, my son, he's so humble. Like when he like doesn't take the reward. But it's like, watching it from my perspective is like, a fucking course, right? Of course, Rupert is going to play that reward to win, but then so nobly not take the reward.
Right.
This is the Rupert who, had to, step off the mat to, give his wife a shot.
He was his blood, Andy. She was his blood.
So like, and you see that, and again, like it's easy to believe that it's sincere, but it also shows just like how Rupert's thing, his shtick, might be counterproductive to the game of Survivor, because like,
Yep.
why'd you help them win if you're not going to have any part of the reward? All you successfully did, Rupert, was take that reward away from yourself and your tribe.
And give them some rice, because actually the one thing that we did forget to talk about earlier was the rice discussion between Savage and Rupert, which should Rupert have steered them towards the rice? I think Savage was going for that anyway, but like, so I don't think it actually changed that much. But like, should Savage have taken more rice? Should Rupert have been like, no, this is what you really need, this crappy lamp over here?
Well, here's the thing. I don't know which way Savage would have gone, because they need everything and they have nothing, right? Like, maybe he wouldn't even have thought to take rice, because it's like, oh my God, there's that tarp you stole from us, or like a pot. Like, yeah, I get they're starving, so probably would want. But I could also see Savage being the kind to be like, well, it's not right to take food. I'll take items. I mean, and to back that possibility up, he didn't take as much rice as he could have.
Nope. To the point where Rupert even threw in a couple extra handfuls there. So yeah. No, go on. Finish it.
What's about that is like, is that Rupert too noble, or too wanting to seem noble on TV for his own good, for the survival of this game? Or was that actually savvy?
I think that was actually savvy, because the way he pitched that was like, it wasn't I'm being noble. It was more like Mafia Don-esque, like, you are going to do what I want you to do, because that's what's in your best interest.
Yeah, and like from a savvy perspective, it's like, continuing bonds with other people in the game, which is going to become very important soon.
They know Emerge is coming, so.
Yeah. Now, the unsavvy part of it potentially is, again, which could fold into why the hell did you dominate a challenge for another tribe? Like, how do the rest of the Drakes feel about this? Now, the good news is, at least it seemed like nobody else was around for that.
Right.
But I mean, they do know that a lot of rice walked away, and that those two spent time together. It was like, what, frankly, would you want to be seen alone with somebody from Morgan after having spent that time together?
Well, I think Rupert did say to the rest of the Drakes, they don't have a lot of rice. So I think he kind of primed them to then, when Savage took the rice, they were like, well, they didn't have a lot of rice, and they left us some, because like, yeah. So like, I don't think it becomes that big a deal anymore.
Yeah. But yeah, it's just like, I don't know. It's just like, it's so Rupert that he would just dominate the challenge just to show that he could, to show up his tribe, right. And then be like, and I guess maybe to be fair to him, he doesn't know that the choice will be put to him whether he gets to participate in that reward at all, right?
Right, but the thing is, winning that reward challenge means that tribe is taking something from your tribe.
Yeah. I mean, even, again, my 11-year-old son was like, unless it's food, you should not help them win, Rupert, like before the challenge even started. If it's food, and part of that is like last week when they said that Rupert was going, whoever you pick is going to be with you for the reward. My son was like, why would you ever try to win? I'm like, well, if it's something you can eat, then you can get it too. But yeah, it was, other than a shower, like getting clean once, it was all permanent reward. It was like, well, give that to the place you're gonna go to.
Yep.
Stay in the boat, sabotage them. Like, you do not have to help somebody else win when it will hurt the people that by all intents, by
spending time with very shortly,
the people you actually care about.
Yeah. And also, like, one question I had was like, so if the other tribe had won, Rupert would have gone back to them, wouldn't he have gotten that shower too? Would they be like, no, Rupert, you can't use it. You're on the same beach. You can see it, but you can't use it.
Yeah, I mean, and I guess this also kind of goes to the show. What the hell kind of reward combo is this for that?
Yeah,
it should have been food. It should have been food that, like, it will, like, perishable food. You are going to get a feast. Everybody who participated in this challenge. Instead, it was like one beat. Again, they set it up so the only way that the person who was taken from Drake would get to participate in it is if they lost. And maybe that feeds into the idea, and we didn't talk about this last week, but we can now, was the whole concept that you get to steal somebody's something that they threw in after like a lot of conversation at the Drake camp about throwing a challenge.
Probably.
Yeah.
Like,
I think it was an audible
probably
either
totally
to,
last minute, and they didn't announce it before, and then they're like, "Oh, they threw the challenge. We're gonna punish them."
yeah. Like it could be like a double thing, right? Because it could be, yeah, if they throw it, they're going to pay it a higher price.
Right.
It could be also maybe we incent them to not throw the challenge by also throwing in a reward, or somebody will get taken and screw up their plan.
Right.
Because if you're throwing a challenge to get rid of somebody and then suddenly that person is no longer eligible to be voted out because they're taken away, well, then we've, as a production, have punished you for having the audacity to do this, to ruin the sanctity of our our process.
Yeah, I mean, and the thing is, like, I wasn't on last week, but Jeff knows they were throwing the challenge. That's why he was asking the questions he was asking at Tribal, because he was, this week and last week, because the camera people tell him, and they're on camera talking about throwing the challenge. So he's asking his questions to try to get them to admit it, and no one wants to admit it. And he's like, I know what you're doing, and that's why I'm mad at you, John.
Yeah. And I mean, the cover, he absolutely knows that he was told by production 100%. But it also was painfully obvious. Like they gave him an easy way to discuss it. So, strength challenge, Burton and Rupert are sitting over there.
Just rotation, you say.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, when you just look at the kind of the reward, which was probably already planned out, it helps with the theory that they had never really intended to do that twist. But frankly, it was a good thing they did. It led to the most interesting part of this, this episode. But also probably the biggest reason that there's some. Well, actually, we're in the spoiler section. That the tribes will end up balancing. If they didn't do that, then frankly, they would have thrown that one challenge, and then Drake would have kept on winning.
Right, and the thing is, if Morgan doesn't get the rice from this reward, I don't know if they're going to win next week because they wouldn't have any food left. And the challenge they win next week is a straight strength challenge. So, yeah.
So it worked out really well. All right, so I think that's enough for this episode.
Yep.
I think
the only thing I got to say next time in the next episode, the Pelican.
How excited! Did you remember that was coming up next, or did as soon as you saw it in the preview?
I mean, I obviously knew it happened sometime before the merge, so I've been waiting for it, and so there wasn't much time left. I didn't know if it was going to be this episode or the next one. So,
what was the more exciting preview, knowing that the Pelican was coming up, or a few weeks ago when we knew that I can get loud too? What the fuck? Like they're pretty much right.
Yeah, they're pretty much equal. Yeah, equal. They're both very equal.
All right, so yeah, that should be exciting, and who knows, we might do 45 minutes on a Pelican next week. I don't remember much else. I mean, I know who goes home, and
I actually didn't remember, and I was like, I think it's this person because that's the only one that makes sense.
Yeah.
So,
or we will also talk about Savage's big hero moment. All right, so that's all for this week. Anything else?
That's it.
I'll hit some music.